Hey everyone, welcome back to a brand new video. Today we're going to be looking at this Rhyperior mill deck. Kind of a failed attempt at doing a unique, different mill control kind of stall strategy in Expanded. For every 5 attempts that work, there's going to be 100 that don't. This is one of the ones where it's like halfway there. You can win some games with it against like people who don't know how to play the game well, but realistically, against a good player, you're usually going to have a very bad game. It's all based around the ability Toppling Wind. When you play this Pokemon from your hand to evolve one of your Pokemon, during this turn you may discard the top 3 cards of your opponent's deck. You can do that multiple times. I came up with the idea regarding that and Scoop Up Net. I made this deck probably about a year and a half ago at this rate. It's been a while since I made it. I'm still working on the list, honestly, because I just don't play it that often. There's actually, fun fact, an interesting thing here. A Rhyperior from Diamond and Pearl base set. It was actually a rogue deck in 2007, had the exact same ability effect, and the attack was also Rock Wrecker. Obviously the numbers were lower because it was 2007, and the art was a lot worse because this one's done by Mitsuhiro Arita. Just a GOAT. Great artist. Great looking card right here, by the way. Then, yeah, I mean, if you want to see that, that's pretty sick. I'm going to build that deck someday for, IRL Retro. But getting into the deck strategy, you're going to evolve your Rhyperiors. You want them to live hits, and you just kind of want to shuffle through your deck and draw into the pieces you need. There's a lot of changes you can make to this list. This one I'm definitely not as stuck to as the other lists that I show off on this channel. We got 4 copies of Rhyhorn here. Use this as 100 HP. That's literally it. 3 retreat, 100 HP. That's why you play it. You play the Rhydon because it has the most HP and more than 3 retreat. So you can play it. The Rhyperior is the only part of the line that matters. You want to level it up and then scoop it up. And I'm speaking like I'm a 2010 player talking about leveling up. Now you want to evolve it and then scoop it up, or use something like AZ to scoop it up. We'll get into those in the future. This is a new edition, not a staple yet, but 1 copy of Zacian V. You just need to draw cards. It gives you another out. It turns all of your Nest Ball and Hisuian Heavy Ball into a draw out. I'm still not sure on this. I wish there was a 3 retreat Pokemon you could put into play with a similar ability. But a lot of these things in this deck do end your turn, so like I'm not sure about the Zacian V. I just added it because I was having some consistency issues, and having a Zacian V that's not only going to fix my consistency, but give my opponent something else to hit into instead of the Rhyperiors. A lot of games you honestly don't even lose by prizes. You just lose because you can't chain Rhyperiors when your opponent's just attacking them. I just want to have something else to divert the attention, I suppose. Zacian V is not at all bad at that. Still pretty bulky, can live a lot of hits. Though you're not energy denying your opponents at all. So, like, they're going to start hitting through you guys eventually. Be careful for that. It's just one more good out in the early game, though. I may change the list eventually to accommodate for it more, if I decide to stick with that. We have 1 copy of Munchlax. This is another turn-ending card. This is one of my favorite artworks, by the way. This artwork is incredible. So-So is one of my favorite artists. Snack Search. Once during your turn, you may flip a coin. If heads, put a card from your discard pile onto the top of your deck. If you use this ability, your turn ends. So even if you get tails, your turn still ends, which does suck. You want to use this to get back Scoop Up Nets, Counter Catchers, Echoing Horns, Versus Seekers, Stretchers, any of this good stuff. There's a lot of turn-ending effects in here, though. I talked about this when I was talking about the Stunfisk deck. I don't love having too many turn-ending effects in this deck, and there is a lot of them, although they come in different forms in this deck, so I think it is a little bit better in that case. But we're just going to keep on going with the list. That's why I said this deck is not amazing. I'm still working on it. 4 copies of Steven's Resolve. Search deck for up to 3 cards, put them into your hand. Your turn ends. Again, another turn-ending effect. You just grab 3 pieces from your deck. It's like a no-brainer to play it in here because there is no way to attack. You could play like a Bunnelby in here maybe, but I don't think you need it. Then you'd have to play, energy as well. You just don't really want to do that. 3 copies of Korrina. Search your deck for a fighting Pokemon and an item card. You can't play greens because you're using basic abilities right here, and you can't really cut Munchlax. You could live without Zacian. You can't live without this Munchlax. I do think you need something to recover. And even once you put Rhyperior in play, then greens wouldn't work. Korrina allows you to search out these pieces and allows you to get items. A lot of times you're just going to get early on like a Korrina and a Heavy Ball or Korrina and Scoop Up Net, build your hand up to a decent size. 1 copy of Cynthia Caitlin, put a support card from your scoop out into your hand, discard a card from your hand, draw 3. So it expands your hand, mainly allows you just to toolbox your supporters, just in case your Lusamines aren't toolboxable, or if you need to reuse something next turn. I don't think it's bad to have. Again, though, this deck could, like, honestly, you could play any supporter here. These slots are all changeable. I just put Cynthia Caitlin because I like that assurance. A lot of times I'll get like a Steven's Resolve in the early game to give myself a 5th Steven's Resolve, turn it out to 8 outs in the deck, or 9 outs, I mean, and that's not bad. Actually 10 with Dowsing Machine. 1 copy of Avery. You want to use this, so if your opponent fills their bench with Pokemon, you want to clear their bench. You do this all in 1 turn. You're going to clear their bench with Avery. You're going to put a Pokemon they don't want on their bench with Echoing Horn, and then you're going to gust it up with Counter Catcher. That's the combo here. You have to play Avery just because your opponent, once they see that you're kind of a trapping deck, you're kind of going to rely on stalling and trapping them. They're just going to fill their bench up with very useful Pokemon or ones that they can scoop up net, and you don't really want that. Some matchups you do just lose because there's nothing you can trap, and they're like doing spread damage, stuff like that. That just, if they're not 1-hit KOing you, a lot of times you're going to struggle, like if they're 2-hit KOing, but like doing disruption and stuff. Things like Serena that can spread a lot of damage with Giratina are also like an impossible matchup. There's just not a lot of great matchups for this deck, honestly, and that's why one of the reasons why it just doesn't work as well as the other archetypes. 2 copies of AZ, put one of your Pokemon into your hand. You could potentially play Acerola. I like the flexibility of being able to pick up these guys. I like the flexibility of being able to pick up an undamaged Pokemon like a Rhyperior to reuse it if my opponent's not hitting into me yet. 2 copies of Gladion. Look at your face down prize cards, grab 1 and shuffle Gladion into the prizes. You want to get Lusamines out, you want to get maybe a Steven out if you're struggling in the early game. Scoop Up Nets are great choices, and Rhyperior pieces. Any of these lines that are not the basic, you definitely want, because the basic you can get out with Hisuian Ball, so you're not as worried about that. Otherwise, you're not attacking, so you can't access your prizes, so just to keep that in mind. 2 copies of Lusamine, put 2 in any combination of supporter and stadium cards from just come out into your hand. The stadium effect is actually very relevant here, but you are going to use it to get back Handiworks. A lot of times you're just going to chain Handiworks. If you're not using an Avery trap turn and you're not searching out pieces, you're just going to chain Handiworks and hopefully get rid of your deck. This deck could get a little bit better in Lost Origins with the addition of Misfortune Sisters, because that will help you pull off the traps more reliably by milling Scoop Up Nets, Switches, Escape Ropes, and Float Stones. So there's some possibility that this deck does get a tiny bit better, but I think just all control decks in general get a tiny bit better with the addition of Misfortune Sisters over having to play strictly Handiwork. So I don't think this deck particularly gets a lot better from Lost Origin. 1 copy of Teammates. You can only play this if one of your Pokemon is knocked out. Search your deck for any 2 cards, put them into your hand. I mean, why would you not play Teammates in this deck? Gives you a 5th out to just search any 2 cards. Obviously, Stevens are 1, but you can use this during your turn, which is very important. A lot of times you're going to chain Teammates with Versus Seeker. If you're just setting up Rhyperiors 1 by 1 and letting them fall, you're going to get like a Rescue Stretcher and a Versus Seeker. Yeah. 4 copies of Heavy Ball. It searches all of your Rhyperior line. 1 copy of Nest Ball searches these 2, and then 1 copy of Hisuian Ball. You have to look at your face down prize cards, put a basic Pokemon you find there into your hand, and shuffle Hisuian Ball in. You want to get a Rhyhorn if it's prized, otherwise it gives you an out to Zacian if it's prized, it gives you an out to Munchlax if it's prized. You both want all those cards if they're prized. Rhyhorns are also nice, obviously, because you want that thick line to be able to scoop them up. Speaking of scooping them up, Scoop Up Net, put one of your Pokemon that isn't a V or GX into your hand, discard all attached cards. Usually going to use this when you have 10 HP left on your active Rhyperior, scoop it up, and then put it back down. A lot of times you may also do this with Rhydon. You promote a Rhydon, let it go down to 10 HP, then you scoop it up, and then, or you evolve it to Rhyperior, scoop it up, and then promote another one to take a hit. 2 copies of Counter Catcher. If your opponent has more prizes than you, you switch one of their bench with their active. Obviously very good because you're not taking any prizes and you want to pull off 1 to 2 traps a game. Echoing Horn helps that. Yeah, and that should be good counts there unless you just really can't find them or they're prized. You usually find them pretty reliably though. 4 copies of VS Seeker. Put a supporter card from your discard pile into your hand. All your supporter cards are really good. I wouldn't run any less than 4 unless you're just going to, like, you know, play around item lock. But I think you just can't play around item lock either. Like, if you're facing an item lock deck, you probably just lose. Another thing that's bad about this deck, because they just lock your Scoop Up Nets, and then they lock your Focus Sashes and your Rescue Stretchers, and what do? 3 copies of Rescue Stretcher is good. You could run a 4th one if you feel like it. Dowsing Machine. This is definitely the A-spec of choice here. I don't think Life Dew's worth it. I don't think you want to use Scoop Up Cyclone either. It would be nice to have a 5th Scoop Up Net, essentially. But Dowsing Machine just allowing you to reuse any card does give you a 5th Scoop Up Net, but it also gives you a 2nd Echoing Horn, 3rd Counter Catcher, and a supporter out to any of the supporters you've previously used. A lot of times it's going to give you an Eco Arm even. What does Eco Arm do? Shuffle 3 Pokemon tools from your Scoop Out into your deck, using this to get back Focus Sash. If the fighting Pokemon this card is attached to has full HP and would be knocked out from damage from its opponent's attacks, that Pokemon's not knocked out. Its HP becomes 10, and then you discard Focus Sash. So you put up a full HP Rhyperior with a Focus Sash. Your opponent hopefully does not have the Field Blower. Again, this deck would like Misfortune Sisters to help guarantee that. Hopefully doesn't have the Field Blower. Hopefully doesn't have any kind of ping or spread damage they're going to use on you. And then you live a hit with 10 HP, you scoop it back up, and repeat the process with another one. And mill your opponent out eventually. 2 copies of Jubilife Village, brand new. If you have Tropical Beach, play Tropical Beach. I don't. So once during each player's turn, the player may shuffle their hand into their deck, draw 5 cards. If they do, the turn ends. Tropical Beach, for those who are wondering, I figure I should get it up. So you'd play 2 copies of this if you had it. Once during your turn, that player may draw cards until he has 7 or more cards, or 7 cards in his or her hand. If they do, their turn ends. I think Jubilife and Tropical Beach are just like roughly as good, but Jubilife is slightly worse. Shuffling and drawing 5 though is very good. It allows you to just constantly plow through your resources. You're going to Lusamine for Jubilife Village a lot, which does kind of suck because you can't Lusamine chain some of the supporters you want, because a lot of times you're just going to be getting back Jubilife Village because you just want the continual, I'm going to keep drawing into pieces. For that reason, you could play Trick Shovel in this deck, a 4 of Trick Shovel, just to kind of accelerate the milling process and just have burnable cards where you just hit them off of Jubilife and then they're not in the deck anymore, so you just shuffle back in and draw hopefully into more pieces and more Trick Shovels. I just couldn't find the space for them. You could maybe cut down like AZ, Cynthia Caitlin, and like a Nest Ball, or, you know, a Verse Seeker maybe even, and just go full in on the item mill. Could also play a clay variant of this deck. I don't think any of them are worth it. What do I know, though? I am not an expert on Rhyperior Mill. 1 copy of Brooklet Hill gives you a good stadium in the early game, gives you a good counter stadium to throw at a Chaotic Swell, potentially, if you run into those. Search your deck for a basic water, a basic fighting Pokemon, and put it onto your bench. There are some potential water Pokemon you could choose to use in this deck. I just don't. Fion from Cosmic Eclipse is one that's useful in the very early turns of the game, but quickly becomes very dead after a while. You could do potentially a Lowland Vulpix. I have considered that as an option, and if you want to do that, I don't think it's bad. The problem that comes with that is that you have all these turn-ending effects that you already want to use. Like, if I'm choosing between using an Alolan Vulpix Beacon or I'm going to Steven's Resolve, I am going to Steven's Resolve because it's searching for 3 of any card, not just 2 Pokemon. You could give yourself that out, though. I can't think of any other water Pokemon at the moment that you would play. There's definitely a few that I was thinking of for a while. So anyway, deleting these from the deck. This is the Rhyperior Mill deck. Essentially, you want to mill your opponent out. The games are never easy. You're never denying energy, besides if your opponent discards a Pokemon with Avery that has energy attached. But, like, realistically, it's just a... I mean, it's just a bad control stall deck. I haven't gotten that many wins. It's probably about a 30% win ratio, just because so many decks can expand it, either have item lock or they have out to damage you without KOing you. Something like a Vikavolt V and an ADP Dragonite deck just completely walls this. That's why I don't play Ranger in here again. You'll see in a lot of my lists I don't play Ranger, because if the deck just doesn't have any chance versus ADPD, you don't play the Ranger. It's not worth it. Obviously, item lock just completely walls this deck. You just can't do anything about it. You know, spreading, things like Zigzagoons, if they play that, yeah, you don't want to run into that stuff. Giratinas from Lost Thunder, yeah, all bad stuff. anyway, that was my Rhyperior Mill deck. If you're feeling a little brave, go give it a try. You might lose a few games, especially until you learn the tempo of how you're supposed to play the deck. It's a little bit of a more challenging deck to play because you're basically always playing as the underdog. You're not going to win a ton of games with it, but it's a lot of fun to play at the very least. Maybe there's a chance for that new Chandelure that has the same ability to be good, and hopefully one day Rhyperior can live the glory days out of its 2007 counterpart as being a proper rogue deck.